Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Sunday edition of the Sunday Sideline Report, Divisional Round Edition. I'm Mike Rifkin, joined by the old ops guy, Mark Halper. Mark, how we doing?
I'm sorry to say it like this. Freaking cold.
It
I'm not
is.
even out there in the game watching the game, and I'm cold. Unbelievable how cold it is. Now,
And
mind you,
it's
it's winter, so this
January.
is well, I said it's winter, so we have to kind of expect it. Just don't have to like it.
For me, I've got the blubber going, so I don't feel it as much. Oh, all right. We'll break down yesterday's game. We'll preview today's games, and then we'll talk about some news in the week that occurred. But let's start with yesterday because both one seeds were in action, and unfortunately for some of us, both home teams held serve. But we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens, who defeated the upstart Houston Texans by a score of 34-10. Lamar, 16 of 22, 152 yards, two touchdowns passing, 11 rushes for 100 yards and two touchdowns rushing. And for the Texans, CJ Stroud was 19 of 33 for 175 yards. The lone Texans touchdown came via punt return, actually, legitimately right before halftime.
hmm
So, all right, Mark, the Ravens held home field. What do you think?
When you look at this year's MVP, there's a reason why he's already won it.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at his performance yesterday with this Ravens team, missing its second biggest offensive target, sorry, in Mark Andrews. Lamar, it didn't phase Lamar Jackson as he knew he was going to have to be a bigger part in this game without Mark Andrews. And literally, they put it on his legs to do it. And look what he did. 100 yards on the ground and two touchdowns, including the final touchdown of the game that sealed it. And two through the air, which is the key stat for me is that Lamar Jackson over the years has not been known for his passing ability, and that's as important to show that he really is the dual threat he was in college. And I think he's got the right receivers. They will have Mark Andrews back next week, which is going to make it all the more dangerous. I'd be very surprised not to see Baltimore in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. Sorry.
Yeah, and if you go back to years prior of the Ravens in the playoffs with Lamar, the score being 10-10 at halftime, I think the old Lamar would have kind of gotten into the fear, or he would have been caught up in the moment. They're like, no, we've got this. And in the third quarter, he took over the game with his legs, and that became
Yeah.
a huge story because listen, we know Lamar his ability to run the ball. This year, he's had a great year throwing the football, but his legs were really the difference in this game because the Houston Texans were getting to him when he wanted to stand back in the pocket in the first half.
Yes.
And so he said, no, not going to do that anymore. I'm going to use my legs and be Superman. And he was. And there's nothing the Texans did wrong. It's just Lamar did everything right.
Right. You look at what CJ Stroud did in this game, and it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a blow up. He went 19 to 33 for a buck 75, which with no touchdowns and no interceptions, which is a clean game. And for a rookie coming in from nowhere to be in the divisional round and getting the shot that he did, he played a great game. He played error-free football. And let me tell you, this is just the start of what we're seeing of this kid. They need a running game, meaning Houston. That's their biggest fault. And look, Devin Singletary is a good James Cook like running back. He'll run you the ball, and he also good out of the backfield. But that's what Baltimore was keying on. They forced CJ Stroud to throw the ball. I mean, Damian Pierce wasn't going to get it done. And CJ Stroud showed up, but you can only do so much against one of the best defenses in football. And the Ravens defense in the first half, yeah, was solid. The second half was great. I mean, when you're Houston and you're out on the field as much as you are because the offense is just running over your defense and the defense is getting no rest in this weather, it's a problem.
And the other part for Houston is the offensive line was just overmatched. I mean, the whole game there was a dude in CJ Stroud's face, whether it was Houston Texans legend Jadeveon Clowney, whether it was Justin Matabuki, they were all up in CJ Stroud's face. You talked about the inability to run the ball. They had 38 rushing yards as a team.
And that's a problem. Now, not to say that CJ Stroud is Lamar Jackson by any way. Okay. I look, we're not going to see a talent like Lamar Jackson again for a few years, but CJ Stroud did something this year that hasn't happened in a few years. And that's a rookie quarterback coming in and really just impressing and not giving into the scariness of the NFL, just came in and played his game, and look where he took the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
This is just a sign of what this team is going to be able to do in a few years. So,
well, we talk a lot about you have to hit right on the coach and the quarterback. Well, the Houston Texans hit right on both the coach and the quarterback. But the Houston Texans have also hit in the draft the past couple of years. Nico Collins looks like he's a player. Tank Dell, who got hurt earlier this year. Then go to the defense for a second. Christian Harris looks like he's a player. Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie, Will Anderson. They're building it the right way. It's
yep.
through the draft and it's developing these young players. And listen, if they want to go into free agency and take some swings, they can do it because they got a quarterback on a rookie deal.
Right.
So, I mean, the interesting question for them, and you know, I go through Spotrac, which gives you all the salary cap info and stuff. Like, if you go through the Texans right now, they're gonna have almost $75 million in cap space. They have the 23rd overall pick because it's from Cleveland. Their first
Right.
round pick got traded to Arizona to move up for Will Anderson. And, you know, their free agents, it's not a big list. Devin Singletary, which probably wouldn't cost a ton of money. Dalton Schultz, which really kind of intrigues me. I'll get to that in a second. But then Derek Barnett, who they claimed on waivers, Jonathan Grenard, Steven Nelson, and their kicker, Kaimi Fairbairn. Like, it's not a list.
It's not a list that you really have to worry about. It's more of a list that is
Of
feasible.
massive players for them. Nelson's a pretty good corner. I think they, yep. And by the way, if Dalton Schultz comes back, it's another weapon for CJ Stroud.
See, and you made a very good point. The cap room that they have. No offense to my guy Dalton Schultz. I love him. You know, ex-Cowboy definitely has earned his time in the league, but I don't think he was as productive because of the fact that CJ Stroud was a rookie. I think if he was put with any other veteran quarterback, he would have had a big year. But you also have to look back to what happened to Dalton Schultz this year. He had more drops this season than he ever
I had
had.
a big one yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. Would easily have been a first down and put them within on the other side of the field. The question is where Dalton Schultz goes. Or does he stay? It doesn't matter because he's not coming back to Dallas because Dallas is happy with Jake Ferguson. So the big key for the Texans is that running game. And that amount of cap space, you can throw money at a Derrick Henry, a Saquon Barkley, a Austin Eckler, just to name three. I mean, there's plenty others. So Houston is a few pieces away. One of them will be gotten this year in a running game from one of the big three that are available and out there to be able to be gotten. I think that'll be their first splash.
Yeah. So for the Texans, awesome year.
Absolutely.
And the Ravens go on. They'll host the AFC Championship game next week against either the Bills or the Chiefs. We'll preview that in a few minutes. Then we go into the Saturday night cap, which was a
Which
great
basically saw the Packers cutting the cheese. It was a great game. It really was, but the Packers ultimately ended up down and very holy as always.
Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers, like the Ravens held serve, beat the Packers 24-21. American Colt hero Brock Purdy, 23 of 39, 252 yards and a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries and 98 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And George Kittle skittle, 4 catches, 81 yards and a touchdown. For the Packers, Jordan Love was 21 of 34, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And Aaron Jones, 18 carries for 108 yards. And this game comes down to a kick. A 41-yard field goal that was missed by Anders Carlson.
And, you know, hats off to the Packers as much as I like to joke and josh about them. They came in, again, big underdogs like they were last week. They went in and beat Dallas. Now they're coming into San Francisco. I was thinking, oh my God, this is the New York Giants team from the Wild. They're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. Thank God, never would have heard the end of it. And now you're looking at this San Francisco team also. And Mike, you and I have talked about this throughout the year. Yes, Lamar Jackson is the MVP. There needs to be a separate category for quarterbacks because how can you not say that Christian McCaffrey does not? Well, I'm not saying no one says he doesn't deserve it. How is he not the MVP this year? Is pretty much what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
He has done it all for this San Francisco team.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. He came up huge in the absence of Deebo Samuel, who left this game. And you're right. Like to me, I know there's an offensive player of the year award. I don't think that's the same thing as MVP because
Right.
it's really not. It's like that award is who's the best running back or wide receiver in the league. It doesn't show the value. It's just a statistical award, which MVP is too. But I don't know. I think we have to redefine the term valuable. And this isn't just a football thing. This is every sport. We have to redefine what value means to a certain team.
And exactly, you know, you look at all the players who've played this year, Jackson, McCaffrey, and the list goes on. Most of them names are going to be quarterbacks because quarterbacks are the ultimate decision maker before the ball is snapped. Okay, so that's what gives them that V that Mike is talking about, that valuableness, because they're the ones who are auto bullying at the line and changing the play and reading the defenses. Not like it was 30 years ago when they didn't have call-ins and they were doing the old-fashioned hand signs for that, but it doesn't matter. Brock Purdy was not excellent in this game. He was good. He was good enough. You lose one of your biggest offensive threats, and they still managed to stay with it. Like Mike said, it came down to a kick. And Mason Crosby wouldn't have missed that kick. I'm sorry. Mason Crosby would have hit that. Even though Mason Crosby has been very unreliable over the last few years, when it comes time for big time kicks, he would have done it. That being said, Jordan Love had a great year.
Hmm.
We're going to see a lot more from him next year and over the next couple of years. The question is, the one thing that Green Bay hasn't done, will Green Bay do now, is start to build around him.
Yeah, I think you have to build around. I think he proved enough this year that he may not be the long term answer, but he bought himself definitely another year to keep pushing that narrative that he is the next guy to succeed in Green Bay. I think the other question, Aaron Jones had a franchise record, which is really weird, of 5 straight games with 100 plus yards. I only say it's weird because of the history of the Packers and how long they've been around. I mean, they're older than Mark here. Um, but what do you do with a guy like Aaron Jones? You know, he's up, he can get extended this off season. They could consider, hey, maybe we move on. Who knows? And I kind of like where they're going with the receivers. I think Christian Watson just needs to stay healthy. Dobbs has played well. This kid Jaden Reed, they got the 2 tight ends and Kraft and Musgrave, which by the way just sounds like a terrible band name, Kraft Musgrave. But they've got the offensive firepower. If they wanted to go add a number one receiver, go for it. I don't think it's a necessity at the moment for them. But you got to
I-
protect Jordan Love and the defense. Listen, you held a San Francisco team that was really good all year to 24 points. There's nothing to hold your head up about, hold your head down about.
right. Green Bay might be in a unique position, just like the Texans. If they're showing that they want, obviously, every team wants to show that they can win. What Jordan Love and the Packers showed this year might attract a big name running back that they need, or a big name receiver, which they will be able to do in free agency, as I believe they're also up there. Not nearly as close as what the Texans have, but I believe they have money to spend.
Give me a second. I will double check that for you.
Thank you.
No,
And the
no
reason why
problem.
I'm saying this, the reason why I'm saying this is because they are obviously sticking with Jordan Love. That's an obvious.
Okay,
And that's good.
so per Spotrac, the Packers have about $8 million now. Of course, you can restructure contracts, and
Right.
so right now they have about 8 million, with free agents being AJ Dillon, John Runyon, Eric Wilson, Jonathan Ford, Keyshawn Nixon, who had that big kickoff return last night, and
Right.
Darnell Savage.
Again, not a list of players that's going to put a dent in it. But yes, Mike's right. By restructuring and whatnot, you're going to free up room in that cap. And that's what Green Bay needs to do to get, I think Mike hit it on the head, is get more protection for Jordan Love on that line.
Yeah, and Jordan Love could be extended, but we do not know where the Packers stand on that. Obviously, they'll answer all those questions, I guess, at when they do locker cleanup, which I would presume is early this week, whether it's tomorrow, Monday, or Tuesday. But a great year for the Packers in a year a lot of people thought they'd be down, and they found a way to really resurrect their season. And if you didn't watch the game, all you have to do is tell Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson they resurrected their season on Thanksgiving, where they feasted on the Detroit Lions. So, all right, those were the 2 games from last night. This afternoon, we got 2 more divisional games. And speaking of the Detroit Lions, they host the first one, and they will take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Mark, before we get started on, we were talking about this on the Wishbone podcast the other night. You can check it out wherever you get your podcast. But we were talking about nobody loses in this game because either Baker Mayfield's going to the NFC title game after what's gone on in his career, or the Detroit Lions are going to the NFC championship game, which is just eight,
Hard
9 years
hard to
ago,
believe.
unfathomable.
I mean, when you look at what was going on in the Tampa Bay side, there was no thought of hope. But Mayfield came in despite everything that was up against him between every analyst in the NFL, including us. Look, we gave Baker a rough time, and he's done nothing but impress this year by throwing for over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. But you look at Jared Goff, also threw for over 4,000 yards, but 30 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. They're almost comparable. So you got two quarterbacks, both very experienced, both with two very solid offenses. Defense is a little shaky right now, both teams. Either this is going, I mean, obviously, this is the two ways it's going to go, so I'm going to change it. I expect a very big shootout. I'm talking 6 to 8 touchdowns a game per team here, and that it's going to be run over football. And I don't think it's going to be done for Tampa Bay. It's all going to be through the air. I think Rasheed White, even though he had a great season, is going to be more there to support from blocking and blitzing. You look at Jared Goff and what they're doing, they're going to do it mostly on the ground, even though their air targets are 100% better. But you have the risk of Sam Laporta being out today. He's still questionable. He has not been ruled out with the knee and leg injury that he sustained. And when you think about removing Sam Laporta from this game, it's a big factor because that's going to be able to help Tampa Bay double down a little bit on players like Amon-Ra St. Brown, even though I don't think anybody can catch him, and Jamison Williams. You also have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the back, something that Tampa Bay doesn't have, which is a solid running game. And I know Tampa Bay fans who's watching us right now are saying this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Unfortunately, I do, because you didn't do it well with Fournette and Jones last year. White didn't get over 1,000 yards. Stick with Mayfield. You want to have a shot in this game, let Mayfield do it. For the Lions have everything going for them. They're now at home in their own hands. So you got your fan base around you. The noise, that fan base has to get loud. They got to sound like the Den with that echoing sound. Got to get Amon-Ra St. Brown involved early. You got to get points on the board fast.
Yeah, these two teams played each other earlier this year, and the Lions went into Tampa Bay and beat them 20-6. Jared Goff
And
threw for 353 yards at 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 for a buck 24 and a touchdown. And the other touchdown was to Jamison Williams. But here's the key that I'm going to bring. Jahmyr Gibbs was not in this game.
he was right at that. What was that?
Montgomery played and had 6 carries for 14 yards and a catch for 19. So he may have gotten hurt in this game. I'm not 100% on that. But
And we know David Montgomery was out, whether it was the thigh contusion or
yeah,
the knee. He had missed a few games this year. But like Mike said, they had a great compliment in Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, that being said, they're going to have both of them today.
yeah.
Something Tampa Bay, like you said, didn't see last time.
And for the Bucks, they only ran the ball for 46 yards, but Godwin had 6 catches for 77. Mike Evans 4 for 49. So the Lions defense did its job in that game against Tampa Bay. The Lions secondary struggled recently, and
Oh,
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are rolling, and the Bucks are rolling right now. So this is going to be an interesting game. But think about this storyline too. These are two former first overall picks.
yep.
Both got casted away by their respective teams that drafted him. The Rams trade got for Stafford, and we know what happened between Baker and the Browns. So either way, this is a really good story for both these franchises. And I'm really hoping, because this game's on NBC like the Lions game last week was, I'm really hoping the guy from Up is there again. Do you remember that? Did you see that last week? The older
Yes.
gentleman in the crowd they kept zooming in on. I'm just like, that's the dude from Up.
This game is probably, it's hard to say game of the weekend when you look at the four games that are being played. To me, I mean, look, yes, tonight's game, which we'll get into in a little bit, is going to probably be the most watched game of the weekend. But this game is going to have a lot of fun in it. And like Mike said, there is no loser here. Yes, obviously, whatever team loses isn't going to be happy about it, but whatever team does lose, they've made one hell of a jump from where they were last year, and to be in the position they are going into next season with the stronger team. So we'll see what happens.
And for the Lions, you've dealt with an expectation this year. Those expectations next year, if you lose this game, they go up a little bit. So just be careful. This should be a fun game though. And
Yes.
but that's the NFC game this afternoon. And then tonight, oh boy. You got Mahomes on the road in the playoffs for the first time. A rematch of 13 seconds, a rematch of a game again earlier this year. You got the Chiefs and the Bills. The Bills beat them 20-17 in Kansas City earlier this year. By the way, Kadarius Toney, who was offsides during that game, he cannot be offsides today. He's not playing.
Yeah, that wasn't a surprise. That wasn't a surprise, but here's this game. This is the game of the weekend, in my opinion. And the number 30 is just a number. However, it was a very important number in KC last year. Weather isn't going to bother Mahomes and company as they've played in worse than what's in Buffalo right now. This is going to be all on Josh Allen's head. And let me explain to you why. Josh Allen is the Dak Prescott of the AFC. He is probably the most, what's the word I want to use? Discriminated quarterback, does not get a lot of the, but when he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. And we all hear about it. He loses today, any talk of a big extension or whatnot is gonna be cloudy because does Buffalo have what Dallas has, the Dak Prescott situation? We can get to the playoffs, but we can't win the big game. I don't think that's the case in Buffalo's situation. I think Buffalo, it was just led to bad time clock situation last year. You don't give anybody 30 seconds, especially Mahomes. You got your home field crowd. You got Josh Allen. You got Stephon Diggs. You got Dalton Kincaid. And there is no Gabe Davis in this one, as Gabe Davis will be out with the injury. So you see Shakir a lot more in the mix. And you're going to see a lot of James Cook. For Kansas City, what does Kansas City have to do? They need to stop showing Taylor Swift on the TV. Who
They don't
friggin'
control
cares?
that, by the way.
Who friggin' cares anymore? Yes, it was funny the first three games. Let Travis Kelce be Travis Kelce and leave him alone. Okay. Yes, like anybody else, this is going to get into somebody's head and screw with them. For KC, there is no real number one wide receiver. Travis Kelce is their main option. So Patrick Mahomes has had to use what he's had, and yet again has made no light of it. He's taken what Green Bay has given him, like Green Bay gave Jordan Love, with no real number one wide receiver, and he's just moved the ball down. You can say Rashee Rice has had a great year. You can say whatever. If Buffalo wants to win this game, there is one way to do it. have the crowd sing "Shake It Off" when Casey comes onto the field. They'll distract everything and win.
I don't disagree with your first point because I think you're right when you say this is a major game for Josh Allen. Because for a second, here's a list of quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen in the AFC: Mahomes, who he's playing today; Lamar Jackson, who if the whoever wins plays next week;
In Baltimore.
and Baltimore. But then give me a sec. Then you got Joe Burrow, who's not in the playoffs at the moment. Herbert, who's not in the playoffs at the moment. We just saw what CJ Stroud is capable of. Give him another year. Then you've also got a Trevor Lawrence. You've got, uh, I'm going to just say because he's returning next year, Aaron Rodgers is going to be back next year. You know,
Yep.
you've got other teams in the AFC. This is the best opportunity for Josh Allen and the Bills to do the damn thing. And if they don't, they are going to look back on this as a missed opportunity.
Not only that, it's contract time, not just for one guy, but for a few. And you got Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, who you have to make a decision on which way you're going to go. You're going to stick with your quarterback, you're going to stick with your wide receiver. I can tell you one thing is that Stephon Diggs is not happy in Buffalo. He has already said he wants to be traded after the season. Obviously, that will change. I would very, very much stand by the fact that if Buffalo wins, that request will go away. But when you have such talk in your locker room, it's concerning. It's like, shit, we don't win. What are we going to do tomorrow? Well, the same thing we do every year. We try to win the Super Bowl and we move on.
And Diggs, you're right. They haven't out in that contract. Oh no, the potential out would be after next year, it looks like.
Right. That's why he was talking about being traded.
Yeah.
Doing that then frees him to do a 1 year deal and then whatever.
Yeah. And listen, the loss of Gabe Davis, you're right. That's another one that's pretty big. Because Gabe Davis, the last time these teams played in the play or the 13 seconds game, he went off in that game. So
Yeah.
this is that's a big loss, but they do have other guys. Kincaid, who had a pretty good rookie year. Dawson Knox is back. Shakir. But to go back to Kansas City for a minute, too. Travis Kelce didn't have a good game last week, but Rashee Rice did. And Rashee Rice had a good game the first time these two teams met, 7 for 72 and a touchdown. But if Kansas City wants to win this game, it's going to be on the legs of Isaiah Pacheco and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes' ability to get out of the pocket is gonna play a factor because it always does.
Now, I haven't seen the conditions of Buffalo since yesterday. The last image I saw was still they were cleaning out that stadium. It's not going to be the same ground footage as it was, even though it was friggin' cold. That stadium, that ground is going to be slick. So I don't know how much that we're going to see Mahomes or Allen using their legs today. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to come down to, again, the word I like to use, durability and being able to stand out there and be able to move around. Your hands get so cold you can't feel the ball, you can't control it. There's a lot of factors. That's why they have like 50 hand warmer things in that little pocket they have.
Right now, it's 17 degrees in Buffalo, but it's sunny. There's no precipitation.
17 degrees, and the game is at when? 8 o'clock? 6 o'clock?
6:30. It's going to be 24.
24 degrees. Yeah, it's going to feel like about 12 on that field. Sorry, that's cold.
It's cold as ice and it's willing to sacrifice.
It's gonna be a very, very interesting game. I don't think this has been the year for Mahomes as he's kind of had to see what it's like not to have all the factors that some teams have, but he's still back in the divisional. So a lot to be said about the Kansas City Chiefs.
And here's the other thing. And I know everyone else has made a big deal. It's his first time on the road in the playoffs. But I know the playoffs are another animal, but it's not his first time in a hostile environment. Every time
No.
Kansas City goes on the road, they are in a hostile environment. And I'm not saying that's a dig at the Bills fans because you know they're going to make noise, but I just don't think that's going to have as much of an effect on him as a lot of other people would think.
Patrick Mahomes has beaten every critic from the moment he first stepped foot on the field, and then he will go out like the great when he steps off the field. He has nothing left to prove to say he's not great. Okay, he's won a Super Bowl. He's led his team to the playoffs almost every year that he's been in the league. That's a quarterback. That's a
Mm-hmm.
leader. That's a player. So Patrick Mahomes, to me, yeah, it's all about now collecting championships. When you get that first ring, and even if it's your only ring, that's sometimes all most players get is one. Even the chances to play in one. As Nate and I have had discussions, he says, I just want to be there when Buffalo wins. I said, you're young, you got 40 more years. You'll have a chance to be
That's
there
what
when
he
it happens.
thinks.
But Buffalo's in a unique situation. They're home. They're with their home crowd. If Buffalo doesn't win here, the talks coming out of Buffalo will be to get rid of Josh Allen.
Or I think it'll be McDermott more, but I mean, but should be a good one.
Yes. This is the game I'm most looking forward to today.
Oh yeah, I gotta tell you. By the way, both defenses are playing really well too. So it may not be the explosive game everyone's been looking for.
It could be a defensive game. It could be a low scoring game. It's Mahomes. It's Allen. It's the divisional playoffs.
And it's Jim Nance in the booth.
Ugh.
Hello, friends, Jim Nance.
Oh, God. Between him, Joe Buck, can we just get some guys who can have some fun in the booth?
Call
Please.
Al Michaels. Let's have a party.
Nah, let's go back and get some old good guys. You know, guys who have not been in the announcing booth. Let's get some guys who are just throwing up there their first time. Guys who've played, they're in their 90s right now, and they get to say one word every 3 minutes would be more
Terry
enjoyable than
Bradshaw.
Jim Nance. I'll take Bradshaw any day over Jim Nance. Just a network problem that I don't think would be solved.
Oh boy. All right. So we got the Bucks and the Lions. We got the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bills. But we've also got some news that's gone down this week, and we'll start with Mark your team because the news came down. Mike McCarthy's going to come back next year. Ian Rappaport then reported Mike McCarthy will not be extended. He will be going into next year as a lame duck. But there are still ongoing discussions about extending Dak Prescott. So I'll give you the floor.
My very close friend Noah Trombley might have covered all this last night, and I hope the vein in his head has calmed down and it has stopped throbbing after he told me what he was going to say. So now I'm going to say it. What the fuck are we doing now? Now that that's out, now we're going to talk normal. The reason Mike McCarthy is coming back has nothing more to do with Mike used the. I mean, I couldn't have thought of a better term to do it. Would use it as lame duck. He's coming back as a lame duck. He is in a losing spot. However, he's coaching in the NFL. And honestly, I don't know if there'd be another team willing to give him another chance after the season. So Jerry Jones is bringing him back, saves him the time of going out and getting and interviewing head coaches. Dan Quinn is now in the unique position of he's the defensive coordinator. Right now he's interviewing head coaching job. He's going to be back as in my prediction. It's the defensive coordinator with the promise that if anything in Mike McCarthy's way or one that's he's out, Dan Quinn is now the interim head coach to move him in going on years out. I think that's what's going to be promised to Dan Quinn. I think Mike McCarthy hasn't been extended for one reason is because it's the fifth year. He wins, then Quinn wins, then they could talk about keeping them. McCarthy has a bad year. He goes. Dan Quinn gets the head coaching job. Now, let's talk about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is nothing more, and I hate to say it, than this decade's Tony Romo. Dak can win. We know that.
That's exactly
Dak,
what Noah said about that.
Dak can lose. We know that. When Dak loses big. He makes errors. He's playing from behind, and it's not always his fault. I mean, a lot of it is, but not all of it. You can't always blame Dak. Now, here's the question: you, if you're Jerry Jones, and that everyone else, why are they extending Dak? Why not? You have a guy who is fit for Dallas. You have a guy who comes back every year and takes the crap he's doing and goes back out and throws it in everybody's face. He had a great year despite everything, despite the fact that everyone said he gave interceptions, despite all the fact that this and that, he came back out and shoved it in everybody's face. And everybody couldn't say it. Stephen Smith couldn't say anything. Nobody could give him shit except when he lost. Because when he wins, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to give him his just due. They now need to see him make it past the divisional playoffs. And are they wrong? No, they're right. However, you don't want to start fresh with a rookie quarterback who has not played one snap with an experienced offense that you have. What was the problem? I don't know. Maybe they all got news that it was going to rain and they were going to cry that they couldn't go outside and play after the game. I don't know. Who gives a crap? It's over with. Dallas lost. Move on, like we all do. We go through the circle. This is our year. When we get halfway through and we're winning the division, we win the division. We got to end. Then it's choking the playoffs, and that's what it's been for the last 30 years. It's not Jerry Jones. It's a game. And no matter what, you could be the number one seed and win every game and still lose in the Super Bowl to an inferior team. And it's happened. It's football, guys. But yes, my WTF yell was for Noah, and I hope he heard it in Texas. I don't agree with the McCarthy move. I understand it. I just don't agree with it.
Well, you got most of Noah's rant down except for one part. He told me I was right, so that's all that matters because I've been vocal about this for a couple of years. And I'm not saying anything mean. I am not saying anything bad about this individual. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys win a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl under Jerry Jones. Because and not because Jerry's a bad individual, but because Jerry's Jerry, if this makes any sense. He has to be the center of attention. He has to be the center of focus. Because if there was ever a year to say, Mike McCarthy, you're done. Go find the nearest truck and your wagon to that truck like you did Aaron Rodgers 10 years ago. It'd be now. It'd be now to go get that head coach. It'd be, I could hire Bill Belichick. Well, Jerry Jones needs all the power, so Bill's not coming. Jim Harbaugh could come back to the NFL. Nope, Jerry's got all the power. Jim Harbaugh's going to want some power. Jerry has to be the center of attention. Honestly, if you go back, that's why Jimmy Johnson got fired. Because Jerry has to be the center of attention. So that's why Mike McCarthy's back. It's why Jason Garrett always stayed. This is a Jerry problem. Roster's good enough to win. 100% the roster is good enough to win. Now, they're going to have to do some things. The offensive line's going to need some revamping because Tyron Smith is very old. Zach Martin's getting up there too. You know, what do they do with a guy like Leighton Vander Esch? I think that's a question mark because he's always hurt. This was the year. You talked about Dan Quinn. What if Dan Quinn says, you know what? I'm tired of living in the Mike McCarthy shadow. I'm going to go to Seattle and be the Seahawks head coach.
And that's the only team I see him going to is Seattle. I don't think he's interested in Atlanta. Obviously not going back to Atlanta. He's not interested in the other jobs. I think he would be most interested in Seattle because Seattle presents a similar offensive situation in structural. You got a decent quarterback, good receivers, a good tight end, a solid running back. The line needs a little bit of help, but the defense knows how to play. Dan Quinn could easily bring it all together.
And Dan Quinn was there when they won the Super Bowl.
Correct. So, yes, there's a lot of factors that can happen. Mike, you pointed out two very good ones. Tyron Smith, his career is over. His contract, I think, has one more year on it, and it could be bought out, I believe, at any time. You just don't go and replace a Tyron Smith. You just don't go and replace an Eric Williams. Two of the best left guards to ever, I'm sorry, yeah, left tackles to ever play the game. You don't replace that. You don't replace Zach Martin. You look at the trouble they had replacing that 92-93 line. You just don't do it. It's going to have to be done through free agency, draft. There's a lot of possibilities in the draft regarding linemen, and there are linemen who are going to fall, but the one who I would love to see, which is not going to happen, is I would love to see Joe Alt fall all the way to Dallas. That's not going to happen. He'll be picked up well before that. There's a lot of offensive line talent in this draft, and I think Dallas could use some of their picks plus the couple and start picking and choosing offensive line pieces that they feel are good enough. Keep Tyron Smith on for one more year to help train somebody to get him better, help him work with Tyler Smith a little bit more on the right side. You can go out. There's plenty of people you can get in free agency. But you're right. I never like to say anybody else is right, but you're right. Jerry Jones has that team locked. Nobody else will be able to come in and change that. Like Mike said, Belichick ain't coming in. No offense, Belichick wasn't coming anyway. Belichick
But he
ain't
was just
coming.
my example. But
Yeah,
yes.
Belichick ain't coming because that is a solid reason. But I don't think any other coach wants to be there and
Right.
have to deal with the bullshit that goes on. Because let's look, it's destroyed Jason Garrett's career. There's no way he's coaching
So
again.
did Clapton.
Bring him back to as the OC. Let him run the offense. I would be very, very happy with that. Meaning to Dallas.
Here's what Jerry wants. Jerry wants a yes man to be his coach. That's what he wants. And Dak, the only thing I'll say is, what are you getting that's better at the moment? Like, unless something unforeseen happens, like they're gonna trade Dak straight up for Herbert, like that. But that's not happened. So What's better that's going to be on the market? Kirk Cousins? Love Kirk Cousins. He's an older quarterback. Ryan Tannehill stinks. So what young quarterback am I really going to give up assets for Justin Fields when I think Dak is way better than what Justin Fields is? No.
It it's a tough situation, you know. If you're a team with the offensive talent you have, you don't carry the quarterback because you're system quarterback. You don't let him go. If he knows the receivers and everything, you don't. I mean, look, I have hopes of Trey Lance really forming into the good backup that he could be, and then eventually possibly taking over for Dak Prescott. But we won't know until we see. So right now, Dallas still goes into next year with Dak at the one, and no assurances really behind him. So that's why you extend. It's not for the needs that he's the player that wants to be extended. It's for the safety of the team.
But what you're saying, what you just said basically means you got a bridge deal, which is like 2, 3 years, and then we go from there. Kind of
Yes,
like if you could do it, is give him a similar contract to what Geno Smith got, except it's going to be a way more money that with Dak.
agreed.
So, well, the Cowboys are making news. It's not a shock. All right. Um, Other news: the Raiders have named Antonio Pierce. There, he's no longer the interim head coach. He is the permanent head coach. And listen, good for Antonio Pierce. He got this team to play really, really hard for him at the end of the year when he became the head coach. So I'm happy Mark Davis listened to his players on this because this is what the players wanted, and they got exactly what they wanted.
And Antonio Pierce didn't have a losing situation. He came in, he came in with no real reason to have to fear winning or losing. I mean, nobody fears winning. He had all the job to win. He had nothing to worry about losing because he was there, like you said, uses the word interim. Yeah, he's the interim head coach. Anything can change at that point. What do you change is the question. What else do you add to this team? Antonio Pierce now has to take this team and show why he can be a head coach in the NFL. And I think he can get it done. I think he's liked by his players. I think he's out front. He knows how to play defense. He knows how to work and how the offense needs to work. I think he just needs a leader on the field.
Yeah, what they're gonna have to figure out the quarterback position, but Aiden O'Connell played okay, but if they can upgrade there, that'd be pretty good. Josh Jacobs, that situation is going to be really interesting. I don't believe they move on from Devontae Adams because Devontae Adams was also very vocal in his support of Antonio Pierce. Uh, Michael Mayer, the rookie tight end, will have a bigger part in the offense. They still have Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker. And defensively, that's where they're going to have to put the work in. They have
Right.
Max Crosby and a bunch of dudes. Like that's it. And so they're going to have to figure that out. I do know they're looking into offensive coordinators with experience. That was something I've read. So look, the Raiders are in. I don't think they're that far away because they got some talent. But they're gonna have to hit on important positions.
Quarterback being one of them.
Quarterback being the
Uh,
most important. By the
yeah.
way, what's to stop them from saying, "Hey, Russell Wilson, here's a 2 year contract. Come play for us." Enter them in the
Why not?
Russell Wilson sweepstakes. Yeah. So good for Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. All right. Then you got the Atlanta Falcons also searching for a new head coach. They have interviewed twice Bill Belichick. They will interview for a second time next week Jim Harbaugh for some reason. And they will also interview Mike Vrabel, which begs me to ask the question Why can't you just hire Bill Belichick?
I don't think Belichick wants to coach the Falcons. I think Belichick wants a team. I mean, look, I don't think if the Atlanta Falcons are the only one who comes knocking on his door, then yeah, that's one thing. I don't think they're going to be the only one now. I think they're the only one right now because there are teams that are going to be looking at them that are in the playoffs. That look at the situation in Philadelphia with Sirianni. Would Belichick go in there? I mean, there's lots of possibilities, but it has to be in a team where Belichick can control and can pick his staff, and that's a lot for ownership to give up these days. So I think Atlanta is trying to lock up the one guy who they think can help dig them out of the cellar and maybe bring them back a little bit to the Matt Ryan age years. But Desmond Ritter isn't going to do it. You need another quarterback in there. The wide receivers are there.
Yep.
Kyle Pitts, I believe Kyle Pitts is a free agent because his 5 years are done. So it's very interesting what's going to happen in Atlanta, but I don't see Belichick going there. I really don't know who really wants to go there.
If you're going to go through all of this, if you're Atlanta, and I'm looking up the Pitts thing now, uh, if you're Atlanta and you're going through this, okay, Pitts has one more year left. He's up in after 2025. But if you're in this situation and you're Atlanta, I think you got to hire Bill Belichick. I think this is the only guy to hire. I love Vrabel, but does Vrabel want the gig? Jim Harbaugh, listen, I think Jim Harbaugh is winding up with the Chargers or he's back in Michigan. I think those are his only two options.
I've pretty much decided that it was Atlanta or San Diego or
So
Los Angeles, whatever they're called these days.
the Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego. But I think if you've got Belichick, if you're Atlanta, they have a GM already in Terry Fontenot, who's going to probably be put on notice too. But they need you hit the nail on the head. They need a quarterback. So whether it's Bill's going to bring this guy with them, or they like a guy at the top of the draft because I think they're 9th or 10th overall in the draft, and they want to move up a bit. They have to figure that out because if they can get the quarterback, they have the weapons with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Offensive line's not terrible. Defense is actually pretty good for the most part. They just
Has some weaknesses here and there, but
right. But they're unless you're the Baltimore Ravens, the perfect defense doesn't live.
agreed. Agreed. And, I hate to, really. I mean, I liked Desmond Ritter in college. I thought he was going to be a decent quarterback. And when he came in last year, he wasn't really had much to go on. It's Atlanta. It's the same situation this season. Yeah, you got Bijan Robinson, who was said to be the next coming of Marshall Faulk. Rookie year did not show it. It's Atlanta. Give Atlanta a couple of years. Nobody is going to shine bright in Atlanta in their first year. The question
Unless they're
becomes
wearing a Braves uniform.
Like Mike said, it comes down to what their position is in the draft. Now, you have a unique situation going on with Chicago. And the Caleb Williams saying that unless Chicago is trading the pick, I'm not declaring for the draft. Well, he declared for the draft, which then makes everybody allude to the fact that Chicago is trading the coveted #1 pick and they're going to stick with Justin Fields. I'm fine with that. I also said that they could trade Justin Fields and I said they could also keep Justin Fields and then go after a target with that #1 pick of Marvin Harrison. And that's what I can see happening. I don't think there's an offer good enough for them to trade out of the one, I think they just take Harrison at the one. Why not? Yes, you're going to pay him a little bit more in draft position, salary wise. I understand what Caleb Williams, Drake May, all these guys are bringing to the draft, and I've redone my draft now 26 times, and it keeps changing daily. So, Rudy, I know you're listening. You know, we're working on it. We'll have a couple of good ideas to show you, but I don't know which team is going to make that move. I have New England making the move, going to one, and Caleb Williams becomes the new set stage quarterback in New England. The problem is, if you're not willing to play in Chicago, why would you want to go to New England? I'm sorry. It seems like a lose-lose because what's he going to do if New England trades up to the 2 and he's there and he says, oh, no, I'm not playing for them either?
Yeah, the draft's gonna be an interesting spot. Atlanta's coaching situation's in an interesting spot. I get it. You want all these different opinions, but to me, if you've got Bill Belichick in your building, you just hire him.
Again, it comes down to willingness and want to coach. He wants the coach to get the all-time record and then he wants to retire.
Yeah.
I respect that. But it's not going to happen in Atlanta. And I think he knows that.
He'll get 2 wins a year when he plays the Panthers.
So. And he's not going to play for 20. He's not going to coach for 20 more years. And I'm wheeling him out in a hospital bed.
All right. And the last bit of news we've got, Mike Tomlin, the Steelers have said he's going to come back next year, and they're open to an extension with him. But Tomlin said something interesting too last week. Kenny Pickett's going to come back as quarterback one, but they are not opposed to bringing in competition for Kenny Pickett.
And why not? A setup by committee. I mean, it's done with running backs. Obviously, more often than you would ever see 2 quarterbacks play in the same game that often. But it's been done before, whether it was in Tennessee or whatnot. It's been done before, where you have McNair and, oh, God, the tall guy. Shit. McNair and whatever in Tennessee had the battle out, and then McNair overly won it. It's not a bad idea. It sparks play. And Mike Tomlin is that coach who is just feared because the guy doesn't lose. The guy wins. The guy puts winning teams every single year. You don't let a guy like that go. He wants to have competition. He believes it's the right thing. I agree with it. I think that's the only way to go right now. And it doesn't have to be a number 1 draft pick. Get a guy who's been in the league 3-4 years who can throw the ball.
Just Daniel Jones.
Yeah, no, he ain't playing in any other. He's not playing ever again. He's gonna be buried with Jimmy Hoffa under the stadium.
Listen, I'm not opposed to this issue either. If I'm the New England, if I'm Pittsburgh, I think you need a quarterback who could drive Kenny Pickett in competition. I wouldn't just hand over the job because I don't think he's earned the job. I know he played well in the new offensive coordinator, but there's nothing about Kenny Pickett that makes me say that's my franchise guy. Like with Ben Roethlisberger, I could say, boom, that was my guy.
Ben Roethlisberger was a different animal, different type of player. He made you believe. He made you. Jesus, he was a damn good quarterback until he rode the motorcycle too much.
Yeah, so I don't know where Pittsburgh goes in the quarterback market, depending on what they want. But again, they're another team like Russell Wilson's not going to back up Kenny Pickett, so I'm going to cross that out right now. But hey, Jimmy Garoppolo, you want to come in and compete here against Kenny Pickett?
What about Gardner Minshew?
But I don't. I think Gardner Minshew kind of earned himself a starting gig somewhere.
I don't disagree, but still, if nobody comes a knocking,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
perfect opportunity.
absolutely. Also, if I'm Gardner Minshew, I'm not opposed to staying in Indianapolis where I
Neither
played
am I,
really well.
knowing that the confidence the coaching staff has in me.
Yeah. So I mean, but here's the thing about Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh, you don't love change. You've had three coaches in 30 years. When I look back at Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, now Tom. And I'm not saying you had to get rid of Mike Tomlin because I was one of those people this year who didn't think the Steelers were going to make the playoffs. In fact, I thought the Steelers were going to have their first losing season under Tomlin, and it would have been the perfect way to out Mike Tomlin. I think the Pittsburgh Steeler fan base, I'm going to say a word that people hate, rebuild or retool, because you never prepared for life after Big Ben. You
Nope.
have to start considering what life after Mike Tomlin looks like. And
And the question is, you put up a good point. Three coaches over their tenure. It's kind of almost the Don Shula, the Dallas situation, all the
it's the Packers with quarterbacks.
yeah, pretty much. It becomes Pittsburgh is a different type. Pittsburgh is the old fashioned, and I hate to say it like this. We're gonna gut it out. We're gonna do it. We're gonna get there, and they do. I don't necessarily like the term rebuild. I hate it, but it's something eventually every team has to go through. And they could have done a rebuild with a new coach,
Yeah.
but you don't send a coach who, like him away,
Right,
especially when he's got at least another 20 years in the NFL.
right. But it's just sometimes you look at the voices in the room, and sometimes you just it's time for a change of scenery.
And
And
that's
listen, I'm not saying Tomlin has to go. I'm saying this would have been a perfect time for Tomlin to go, and you could have ushered in kind of that reset with a Kenny Pickett, with the offensive weapons they have. But you know what? You do what you got to do. But next year, when I'm doing my predictions for the AFC North, I'm still going to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers as the fourth best team because in Cincinnati, they're going to have a healthy Joe Burrow.
right.
Cleveland should have Deshaun Watson back unless he's getting more massages. And the Baltimore Ravens are going to the AFC title game.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Not unfortunately, you're not wrong. You're right. Saying you're right twice an episode is a problem.
That is
Um,
a problem. I've never been told I was right
I have
twice in
not
a day
counted.
ever.
I haven't counted Pittsburgh in a long time, but if they rebuild certain positions, I don't really have faith with Najee Harris or Jalen Warren as my running backs. And again, this is a running back free agency that is probably the best that I have ever seen in my football time. And that's hard to say. Pittsburgh's in a unique situation. They can go free agency and get a running back. And then you have a backup of Najee Harris or Jalen Warren at the 2 and the 3. You then got to get at least another cornerback in there, and you got to get another wide receiver.
Yeah.
The answer isn't there in George Pickens, and just to show you how much of a factor this other one left in my mind, not much. So
Deontay
Pat
Johnson.
Fryermuth comes first before anybody else. So in the long speak of it, I think Mike Tomlin, and I think you're right, Mike. It's 3 times. Wow. Um, is that rebuild is the right term for Pittsburgh. But Mike Tomlin has to have it in an agreement that if they go the rebuild way, his job cannot be affected by it. Meaning, if they lose, he has 2 losing seasons because they've gutted it out and they're rebuilding. That if he has a losing season, that it can't be that all determining factor.
Let's see what happens. coaching cycle is in full force. We got 2 more divisional games next week. I'm sorry, we got 2 more divisional games today. Then we got championship games.
I was about to
week.
say, what multi-universe are you in now?
Oh man, I would love a multi-universe or a multi-grain bar. I haven't decided yet. But that'll do it for this edition of the Sunday Sideline Report here on the SIN YouTube channel. Check us out every Sunday. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Check out all the podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in Sports Insanity Network or SIN and see what you got, see what you get. But until next time, the old ops guy, I'm Mike Rifkin. We'll talk to you next week here on the Sunday Sideline Report. Enjoy Divisional Sunday. I'll talk to you again next week on Championship Sunday. Enjoy the football, everybody.